Okay. Welcome everyone to today's wonderful research presentation, Nuestra Comunidad Investiga, our community researches. Really, this is a wonderful group of panelists that were part of the Adelante Summer Research Program that we host every summer. And it's an opportunity for us to get to know a little bit more about their research, their experience, their projects, how that's evolved for them, and celebrate a little bit of their work and their journey. So I welcome all of you here. I'm also co-facilitating this presentation with our wonderful Jasmine Corona, the Adelante training specialist. Jasmine, do you want to say hello?
Hi, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. And I'd like to give a shout out to Rose White from the Office of Grad Studies. Thank you for being here, Rose. Do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think I also saw Sharon on the call. I think I saw her join. So Sharon, if you're here.
I am here. I don't have my camera on though. Sorry about that. This is really excited. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And welcome to all of our Adelante Wayfinders. Those of you that are new mentees and continuing mentees, welcome to our Adelante mentors and our Adelante outreach coordinators and ambassadors. It's really wonderful to have you all here. So I think we can move on to our next slide. What we're going to do first is introduce our wonderful panelists. And I will first introduce the panelists, and I'll turn it over to them to speak a little bit about themselves. Our first panelist is Lucia Martinez. Lucia, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm a first generation college graduate. And actually, I think I might be the first, maybe second one in my whole family, immediate and extended, to be getting a master's degree. So my research is on the eating, the nutrient intake, and mealtime behaviors and gastrointestinal issues of children with autism. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I've worked with kids with autism in the past, and I have a family member that's autistic, so we'll get into it. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Lucia. We're happy to have you. And then I would like to introduce our next panelist is Dulcie Aldana.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chelsea, and I am also a first generation college student. I don't think anybody in my family has gotten a master's degree, and maybe the younger ones that are younger than me have gotten bachelor's, but I'm like the first one from my family to get a bachelor's degree. And let's see, I don't know, I guess I'm just excited to be here and talk about my research.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And our next panelist is Anaí, right? Anaí Martinez.
Hi everyone. My name's Anaí Martinez, and I'm also a first generation college student. I'm a college student in the credential program, so for single subject social science. And a lot of my research was previously about the feminist movement in Mexico, and well, specifically modern Mexico. So I'm very interested in Latin American studies.
That's great to hear, Anaí. Thank you. And our last panelist is Ash Martinez Aguila. Ash, do you want to introduce yourself? Is Ash on here yet?
I don't think she's on here yet.
I think she's not on here yet, so we'll just give her, we'll circle back to Ash when she gets on. So I think we can get started and begin with our panelists, because we'd like to get to know a little bit about why they decided to go to graduate school first, before we delve into their research and the research topic. So yeah, can you start us off and tell us a little bit about why you decided to go to grad school and if you faced any barriers on your journey to grad school?
Yeah, well, my reasoning for going to grad school is very easy. In order to practice nutrition in a clinical setting, you need a master's degree. So it was either that or not practice in a clinical setting. Did I face any barriers? I would like to say my biggest was imposter syndrome. I think for the longest time, I told myself, oh, you're not going to get in. Oh, you're not going to make it. And so that pushed me from applying to grad school earlier. But I think that has to be the biggest one that I faced so far.
I agree. I think imposter syndrome is something that we all face as we're trying to get into graduate school, and something that can stay with us long after, and something that we need to work on challenging, right? Every step of the way,
Yes.
especially because you deserve to be here. You earned to be here, and we are happy that you are here. So thank you, Lucia. Anai, do you want to share how you got to grad school or how you decided to pursue graduate school?
So I mainly wanted to like further my education because I wanted to become a teacher and teach others about history, and even more since my dad wanted to one day become a history professor. So I'm kind of, without even knowing that, living out his dream essentially. And I also want to bring in more curriculum about Latin American history into high schools. So that's my main reason. But just like Lucia, I did also face a lot of imposter syndrome, especially like with my writing and like submitting papers and doing research. And it took a couple years until I finally had, I would say, some confidence in more of my work. And luckily I had the support of a lot of professors to get me to where I am right now.
That's wonderful to hear. And I do agree with you. There needs doing more Latin American history, in education, and learning about all that, because I'm a Latin American studies background too. So I agree with you on that. Thank you, Anai. And I see that Ashley has joined us now. So hi, Ashley. Thank you for being here. Do you want to introduce yourself to our fellow audience?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I just came back from my internship. So my name is Ash, and I'm a second year in the Masters of Communication Sciences and Disorders. And the research project that I did, it was effects of peer mentorship on the outcome of SLP grad students. So basically, I established a formal mentorship program specific to our masters and for its demands. And just quick information, I'm not going to read word from word, but basically there's only 8.7% of people that associate with underrepresented groups, which is crazy because that's like all people. So even with like Latinos, it's even smaller than that. So a strategy I was thinking of that if there was an established mentorship program created, that there might be some kind of incentive to get more people from diverse backgrounds to apply to the program. So that's me in a nutshell, and that's a baby goat on the day they did goats and goats. That was the best thing ever.
We really liked those pictures so much. Both Jasmine and I were like, good.
It's
Gosh.
so cute.
And so since we're just introduce yourself, do you want to talk about how you got into graduate school and how you thought about pursuing your graduate education?
Yeah. So for my program, I have to have a master's in order to actually practice. So I knew I always wanted to go to grad school. When I first applied, when I first graduated, I didn't get in. I really applied just because I just felt like I had to, but I really didn't have the full heart onto it. And I kind of took it as like, okay, like this is probably the time for me to build up my resume again and build up my connections and, and kind of fine tune areas I need to. So I actually took me about like 5 years to apply. And then what I did, I actually had like 4 letters of recs. I got like 2 professors and 2 from jobs. And I even got like clinical experience. I got technological experience. So I felt my resume was like perfect. So then when I did apply, I actually just like got in, which is crazy because a program only admits like 28 students per year. And I was so proud of myself for getting in. But of course, I still suffered from imposter syndrome, especially that first year. And taking that big gap year, I definitely was behind compared to all my peers. So I really had to brush my skills up again. But now I feel like I'm definitely way more confident than I was my first year, and realizing that I do belong. And I even got the Student of the Year award for my first year. So yeah, I'm really proud of myself.
I did not know that. That is amazing. I know. I remember Ashley, because you started in the Adelante program as a mentor that very first semester of your grad program, and how it felt, right, really daunting and really like this big thing to do after a couple years being out. And now you just seem like you're just like, you know, thriving and just tackling it. This
Trying
huge
to, but yeah.
You're doing it. You're doing it. Thank you, Ash, for sharing that with us. And Chelsea, do you want to share about why you decided to go to graduate school and any barriers you might have faced on your journey?
Yeah, so I graduated my undergrad in 2020, which was the year of the pandemic. So I walked across my living room as for graduation. And so I decided to take a gap year because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I ended up working at a mental health clinic, like a residential facility that had people that were like suffering from like depression, anxiety, or any type of disorders. And so I ended up loving working there. But with a bachelor's degree, there's very little. Well, I loved working there, but with my bachelor's degree, I had like no say in anything basically. I kind of like followed the rules of what everybody else told me. And I kind of wish I had more seniority, or like I knew that a master's would get me like more people to listen to me. And so that's why I decided to pursue a higher degree. And I guess some barriers that I faced in the application process, it was definitely tough because I feel like application for master's is very different from like a bachelor's, since like when I was in high school, everybody was pursuing one. So there was like a lot of people helping, versus in my master's, especially during the pandemic, there was not really much going on. So I had to figure it all out on my own. And in terms of imposter syndrome, I feel like I still am going through it now. It's definitely gotten a little better, but through research, I was able to join the GEFP program, and they kind of have lessened my imposter syndrome because we talk about like all of the things that you know, first generation students face, or just people that are underrepresented face. So it's getting better, but it's still there.
I understand that. And can you tell us what is the GEFP program?
The GFP program is a graduate equity fellowship program.
The graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
Just
talk
wanted
more
to
about
make sure that in case there's folks on here that didn't know, that stood for. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chelsea. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine. Jasmine's going to facilitate our next question.
So question number 2 is, can you tell us a bit about your research project and how you chose this particular topic? I know we touched on it a little bit in the previous question, but if you could kind of like expand just a little bit more as to like how you ended up in this specific topic or this specific field that you're researching. And please share whatever you feel comfortable with.
I can go first.
Yeah.
So my topic, like I said, is looking at the nutrient intake, mealtime behaviors, and gastrointestinal issues of children with autism. And the reason that I chose this topic was I worked with, I was a preschool teacher for 4.5 years, and one of the kids in our programs had autism. Yes, autism, sorry. And when he started with us, he would only eat 4 things. He would eat salami, cheese, crackers, and oh my God, I'm forgetting the 4th thing. But that was it. That was in. Mom was like, he won't try anything else. He won't eat anything else. That's just it. And so through just kind of involving him in like some of the stuff that we were doing, whether it was making lunch, I would have the kids help me make lunch, and he was going to another program. He started eating just more food. And then through my research, because I kept asking my boss, because she has like 20, I think 20 something years of experience working with kids. So I would ask her, I was like, why is it specific foods that he's only eating? And she's like, oh, it's the texture. That it has the texture. They just, if they don't like texture, then they're not going to eat it. And so through doing research, I have been able to find out that while it is texture and like the smell, like sensory of food, it's sometimes GI problems that contribute to them not being able to eat certain foods, which then, if you're having GI issues, you're not going to have the best meal time because your stomach might be hurting, you might not be, you might be nauseous. And so if, depending on the severity of the autism, they might not be able to communicate the symptoms. So that's how it kind of started with it. And then some of the research is fairly old, so just bringing it up to date. And originally I wanted to just do it with like our Hispanic population because there's a lot of misinformation. But it's good that it's a case study so that I can compare and see where maybe additional gaps are.
Yeah. So are you able to use your, this might be a little bit off topic, but are you able to use your student as a case study?
No, I mean, I possibly could. And I haven't reached out to the family, and I'm sure they would be fine with me using him. But I wanted to keep it within Chico for right now. Unless I can't get enough participants, then I will extend it out to Napa. But we'll see. I just wanted to kind of keep it within Chico, Butte County.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Fascinating. That's so interesting.
I can go next.
Yeah.
Most of my research was about the feminist movement in modern Mexico and looking at its evolution. So I mainly focused on the years of 1970 all the way to like early 2000s and some current events. And I mainly focused on like violence against women, their participation in politics and their representation, and also about sexual orientation. And so I mainly got to this topic by the help of one of my professors. So if you guys know Dr. Lewis from the history department, he helped me a lot with finding sources, just because this topic isn't, you rarely are ever going to find secondary sources on this, just because most of the time the feminist movement in other countries is very overlooked. So we always have a lot of information about the second wave of feminism here in the United States, but like it's even in our textbooks, but we don't hear about it from other countries in their perspectives. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to focus my research on that. And especially because some of the topics, the women there in Mexico are still fighting for that today, even for some of the rights that they have. And a lot of my sources that I use were primary sources, just because, like I said before, there's not a lot of secondary sources out there. And yeah, that's basically it.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
I'll go since we're gonna go in order. So actually, before I want to comment on Lucia's project, which is really cool because I actually have like maybe like 10 clients with autism who have just a feeding disorder too. And yeah, that's something that we definitely see as well. So I'm really looking forward to see your research. So for mine, which is mentoring, well, obviously mentoring is really close to my heart. So that's probably why I chose that. I'm in Worth Adelante as a mentor, but previously when I worked at Bill.com, I actually established a mentoring program there and really saw the huge benefits of new employees coming in. And with this mentor program, they're ready to be independent within 3 months because of this. So I kind of took it that, okay, if this is established, we could probably do it for our program. It's really demanding and rigorous, the CMSD master's program. So this is pretty much how it came about. It was just like my interest with mentoring and then seeing the need in the program. See, that's pretty much it. I don't know if you want me to expand more, Joanna.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's good. Yeah, we have lots more research questions
Okay.
following up that we'll dive a little further into your research.
Okay. So my research project was inspired by my last job that I had in my gap year. One of the things that I noticed was that a lot of the people that were struggling was due to like social support or lack of social support. So that inspired my research. And so I work with mice. And so what I do is after they're like separated from their mom, after they're weaned, I isolate them for a total of 21 days, which is basically all of their adolescent or a big portion of their adolescent life. And I then study them to see if they show more depression and anxiety like behaviors. And I also study their like vulnerability to drugs of abuse. So I also try to study and try to determine if they are more susceptible to cocaine than people or mice that are group housed. And like the reason why this is, I guess, relative to humans is because humans are a like a social type, are social similar to mice. So mice are affected similarly when they're isolated like in humans. So yeah, that's my research.
It's fascinating too. I'm always really interested whenever you talk about your research project too, because that's very interesting. And I'm like, I want to read the findings. Thank you so much, Chelsea. And I think everyone's shared, right? All of our panelists, yes.
Yeah.
So our third question is, what was your experience while doing research? Did you encounter any obstacles in your research journey, like while researching? And if so, how did you navigate that? We really want to focus on your experience while conducting research. So, Anaí, do you want to start us off maybe?
Okay, I'm unmuted, sorry. So my experience, I delved in straight into it. I felt like I was kind of seen into the eyes of these women because a lot of my sources were primary sources. So I got to use a lot of their journal entries, a lot of poetry, even some like newspaper clippings from that time of when they had marches for the feminist movement in Mexico. So I went through a like roller coaster of emotions, just because of a lot of the findings I found of these women. A lot of it's the fear that they had when they were in Mexico during these times specifically. One biggest thing was something called femicide, which is essentially these women were being murdered just for being women. Especially violence against women was horrific during that time. I will always remember this statistic that over 80,000 cases aren't reported for women who experience violence in Mexico, just in the 1970s alone. So that really hit home for me. And I remember I even asked some of my aunts who were originally from Veracruz and who were teenagers during that time. And they said a lot of that, they experienced that as well. So a lot of it just hit home for me just because it is my own culture, my own people. Some of the obstacles that I did experience while doing research was finding secondary sources. Like I said previously, there's not a lot of information on this. So I did have to use like journals, a lot of poetry, any writings that I could find. So I was very fortunate enough that the Universidad Autonomía de Mexico, so that's just the university in Mexico, they have an online archive resource. And so I was able to use that. So I was able to find all of these journals throughout the Mexican feminist movement. And it's kind of separated into 4 different categories. And they even categorize it even more into types of topics such as politics, contraception, abortion, anything, you can find it there. So I was very fortunate about that. And also with the help of Dr. Lewis, who also did research on the feminist movement, he was also able to give me some of his research and let me preview some of his book that he was working on, a specific chapter about this movement. So I was also able to use that. And so I had a lot of support, and primary sources very much guided my way throughout this research.
Wow, that is incredible. That what a wonderful journey that is, and yet like so impactful, right? To you and your story and your family. And it's really interesting too that you were able to use that chapter from Dr. Lewis too, right? Because having trouble finding secondary sources, that's like what we want to know about, right? Because there isn't a lot of research done. There's not a lot published on that. And so you're really delving in uncharted territory, but that's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll open it up to the other panelists to talk about their experiences.
I can go next. Um, what is my experience while doing research? I would say it's very time consuming. You definitely have to really like what you're doing for you to want to continue doing it. Did I face any obstacles? So many. My professors of it's his first year doing research here, so I'm like his guinea pig, I always say, because a lot of so many things like go like I guess we're learning together, so many things go wrong all the time. I remember like when we first started, like the cameras would turn off, which was horrible because how am I supposed to analyze my data if I don't have it? Or like we don't have enough mice, or like like the moms are so stressed that they eat their mice or something. So there's definitely like a lot of things that happen in the lab that that happen when you work with mice that you're like so are so unexpected, and you kind of just have to roll with it. I think it was navigated well in terms of my professor, since he's worked with mice like all of his life. He kind of made us all in the lab like feel better and reassured, because it's like it's okay, it's a work in progress, we'll get there. And I guess I'm always stressed because I'm always like, will I have enough mice for my experiments? Like, is it going to be something that I'm going to have enough data for? There's always a lot of a lot of things where you're just like, I hope it works out. And I'm still in that kind of area, because I'm like, are we gonna have enough mice, since I have to wait on like the moms to reproduce and stuff. But it's a work in progress, and it's working most of the time.
Yeah, that's definitely like like Rose says, a great example, right? Like doing research really is pulling this like resilience, perseverance, dedication from you, right? And especially I think and when you're working in a lab. I've heard that from so many of the mentors that I talked to, right? Like one that was like growing cells and the cells were dying, and having to try different things and do different options and different solutions for different problems that arise. And I think that's just a wonderful like life skill that teaches you. So thank you, Chelsea. And I'll open it up to Ashley or Lucy, whoever would like to talk a little bit about their research experience so far.
I'll go. So much like Chelsea's, it's very time consuming. I think one of the areas that I've struggled for mine, because we're looking at a few different things, was finding surveys and questionnaires that we could take and kind of adapt. And even I have my questionnaire right now, and it's really, really long. So since it's going to be the parents taking it, I'm gonna have to go back and edit. But I wanted to see, because we're looking at the severity of autism, and then we're looking at the nutrient intake of nutrient intake, and then mealtime behavior. There's a survey for that. So there's different components, and so definitely that was time consuming. But my mentor, Julie Holland, has been great. I think at the beginning, I told her, I was like, I want to work with kids with autism, but I really hadn't like, I guess, narrowed it down. And so she's like, well, do you want to do a qualitative or a quantitative? What kind of research would you like to do? And I was like, oh, I don't really know. And so she provided me with 2 articles, and she's like, read these articles, and then next week when we meet, you can tell me which one you would like to focus on, like what type of studies. And so I think that was a great starting point for me, because I haven't done research to this extent, I think, maybe ever. So it was a great starting point. And so from that, one of the articles that she helped me locate was a review. So then I was able to pull articles from that review, and that's kind of how it started snowballing. And then I was able to collect a lot of my data. And like I said, because it's a lot a lot of the data out there is not in nutrition articles, it's more in like psychology. And they're a lot older. It's been a lot of the same kind of articles. And so I'm excited for where this is gonna end up. But it's definitely progressed from its beginning stages, which was just 2 articles.
That's fantastic, and nice that you were able to sort of like get that initial, right? Like not knowing like which way to go, and having your mentor sort of like help lead you, right? And guide you in that. And then kind of like it like evolves and develops, right? It like flourishes. And sometimes when you start researching one thing, right, and it really leads you down a different kind of avenue or path than you may have originally thought of. And so that's always really interesting. Thank you, Lucia. Ashley, do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like an obstacle, and I really don't really have one. I kind of it's so
That's awesome.
I know. It's a weird one. So I knew what I wanted to do, and I think the most difficult part was like coming up with a design of like how I wanted to implement, and like getting down to those like tiny details, because you have to be really specific when you come to research. Like you can't leave anything out, because that way someone can, repeat it later on. So, but my faculty advisor was really helpful, and giving me examples and seeing how it looks out, and we're kind of like talking it through. I mean, really the huge obstacle is that right now I'm currently doing my research and having mentors, first year grad students, but I'm also, working 2 jobs and having my internship. So I think navigating both of those has been really challenging, because I want to make sure that I'm doing, the best, and making sure that I'm giving it all I can so that the results will show. But that's pretty much been like the main obstacle. Is it is time consuming, and I agree, like you really do have to love what you're doing. So it's just working, pushing through it. It's almost ready. It'll be ready by the end of this semester.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more about that. And you're right. It is time consuming, and you really do have to be connected to this project, right? Because it can become your entire experience too, right? And it should be something that's really fulfilling and rewarding. That way, the time you put into it makes it feel so worth it, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I'll turn it over to Jasmine for the next question.
Thank you. So question number 4 is, has your research evolved over time, and how has your research impacted you both academically and personally?
I can go.
Yeah.
So obviously it's still evolving, but I think doing this research, I'm like continued to like ask questions. I'm like continuing to find the gaps in my own major. And I'm like, okay, this is like, obviously I want to increase the diversity in my program. So this is like one step. Like, what else can I do? And I feel like thinking like that has just made me more interested in like reading articles and like seeing what's out there and seeing new trends. It's become way more like fascinating to me now that I've actually been a part of it. So it's been a really great experience. I feel like it's just been really, really great.
Yeah, and you're also doing research that will help evolve your program also. And you're like at the forefront right now, right? Like you're creating a whole like mentorship that could be integrated into the program after your research project is done.
Right. Like I was like always like thinking like the bigger picture, like what can we do to focus more on like the career itself? Because a lot of our research is done with actually like clients and doing trials. And I really wanted to think, how can we improve as a career and bring more diversity to the field?
Yeah. Do you think it's impacted you personally though? Like, I hear the academics and how you want this to, how it's going to impact academically, and like how you're going to change the field, and how different clinicians are brought up after you're done. But I guess I'm just curious if this has impacted you personally. Like, has it changed you as a, like, were you as inquisitive before, or are you more now, or
Yeah, I feel like I am more now, like questioning and being more curious about the things around me. But I think it's like grad school in general, though, like not even just this research, but I feel like grad school has really changed me personally, and academically.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can go next. My research has definitely evolved over the course of the last year and a half, and it has made me want to do more since this master's program is only 2 years. I feel like it's so limited in what I can do, and it makes me want to do more research, which is why I want to apply to a PhD program because it's a little bit longer, and I feel like I have more time to do more. And so I guess that's how it has impacted me academically. But I agree with Ashley that just grad school in general just makes you more curious and it lets you see all like the gaps that there is. So I feel like personally, when I like read things, I like ask so many more questions than I would before I started a grad program. I'm like, well, how did they do this? Like, what is their methodology? Like, what was the environment? I feel like I ask a lot more questions and I notice like missing information a lot more now. And I guess like, I mean, that's the main ways that they've impacted me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfect, right? Now you're seeing where like research where the gaps are, and you can see it, right, based on like what you're looking for and where your gaps are in your own process, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's important to know. Lucia or Anna, do you have?
I can go next.
Yeah, perfect.
So my research has evolved as I'm finding more primary sources. So sometimes I'll go back and add more to my paper, especially on topics of like sexual orientation. Just because a lot of it doesn't, you have to like find it in like newspaper clippings, or sometimes you have to find it under a different topic or name. And especially since with my topic, everything is mainly in Spanish and not in English. So it takes me sometimes a while to find things because I'm trying to figure out like the translation between like the certain topics I'm trying to find. It's also evolved just with the current events that are happening in Mexico too. Like more specifically with the administration under Obrador, just because he doesn't acknowledge that there's violence against women. So that's also another thing I like to include into my paper about like current events that are happening, just to keep it relevant and updated. It's impacted me, yeah, both academically and personally. Academic wise, it's pushed me to want to further my education and one day get my PhD in Chicano or Chicana studies. Just especially in like the focus of education, just like how I said previously, I think there should be more Latin American studies in high school, especially when you're learning about world history, not just the US perspective, but other countries' perspectives too. And personally wise, I felt like I've gotten more closer and connected to my family because I talked about my research with my family and they even shared their own stories. So I felt like we had more of a bond during that time when I was doing like majority of my like research.
Yeah, that's great. Like you're getting closer to your family through your research, actually, which isn't everyone's experience, but that's really great.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious. Well, I can wait for the Q&A to ask, but
Or you can ask. I have all these questions too.
Yeah, so I guess I'm curious to know is how do you separate, well, this can go for everybody too, but like how do you separate your research from yourselves, right? Like what do you do to kind of like contain this research? Because I'm thinking about Anaí because her topic is very heavy, and I've taken a class on femicidio on the borders of Canada and Mexico. So I just remember feeling like, feeling this tremendous weight of how do we kind of like participate in this research as intellectuals, but also like how do we not feel that that weight of this problem that we can't solve not that we can't solve it, but like more like we can't throw a solution at it quickly, right? Or I don't understand. Do you get what I'm saying? Like what I'm asking?
Yeah. So during that time, like I said before, it was a roller coaster of emotions, and it's really hard to like not stop for a moment and either feel really sad, and especially with a lot of the statistics that there is, and there's so much more that I don't even want to like, well, I not that I don't want to share, but sometimes it can be very heavy on someone, especially if they're not like prepared to hear it, or with like context of it. So a lot of the times I did have to like step back and like just take a breather, because like I said before, especially topics like violence against women, it can be very heavy, because I also touched on violence against young girls as young as like the age of 10. But a lot of my research and like the evidence that I used was using their stories to allow that to carry the narrative, essentially. So I saw it more as like a storytelling perspective rather than just hard statistics. And just because I wanted to share their stories, because a lot of the time it's never heard, or it's mainly because there is that language barrier because it's only in Spanish. So I also translated them in English, just that way people can also understand what they were trying to say.
So your research in a way, and maybe this is what keeps you going, is that you are changing the narrative and you are gaining more access to people and you're sharing their stories. So they're not just silenced, right? You're continuing the legacy.
Yeah, that's so incredibly important. I'm so excited. Riley just posted in the chat that your paper was published in the Chico Historian. And so the link is there for anyone that would like to read it. I am definitely going to read it. I'm very interested. Thank you for sharing that, Annie.
Yeah, thank
I'll go.
Yeah.
Just me.
Please.
I think well, my research even now I think it's continuing to evolve. There's still, like I said, changes that probably will be made before I send out my final survey and with my proposal. And academically, I think it has affected me in the sense that I think I've talked about it with Joanna that I would like to eventually get a second master's degree in child development. I like just researching and looking at child development because it really is the foundation for you essentially are as adults, like how we are as adults is started from when we were kids. So I really like looking at that. And personally, I am also part of the nutrition journal club. It's looking at nutrition for transgender individuals and so how nutrition affects transgender. And so we brought up that there's a correlation between ADHD and autism. And so now I'm like, oh my God, is that even, should I get tested? So it just makes me question my own genes and whether I should get tested for certain things. So it makes me just question, it just makes me more curious and I like that.
Yeah, school and research does open the possibility for more learning. And I feel like a thread that I'm kind of following is that your academic and your research has kind of given you more of a lifetime of you're more of a lifelong learner now, right? Or you were before, but now it's more of like, I want to continue this conversation and this work.
Yeah, and I could tell that, for each of you, it's shaped really how you see the world, right? It's impacted like your perspective and how you show up in spaces now. And I think that's a really important and vital. So like what you choose to devote yourself in your research can be really, really like life-changing for you, your family, and for the community, right? And that's what we want to really highlight here today. Right.
Yeah.
All for sharing. And I think we have one more question before we open it up. So if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And what would you do the same? And this can be for your research program, your topic, or you can also speak about just grad school in general. But we really want to know, like, if you you had an opportunity to go back and retake this, is there something you would change or do differently?
I can go first. I guess a lot of the things that I would do differently would have been more in my undergrad. I feel like because I was like a first generation, I didn't really know a lot of the things that college has to offer for you. I didn't join that many research labs when I was an undergrad, and I didn't really explore it. The reason why I did was because I would kind of overhear other students talking about it. So I definitely wish I would have joined more clubs, like just been more active in as an undergrad, because I feel like it would have probably I would have probably learned a lot more. And honestly, as a grad student, I feel like if it weren't for Adelante, I would know nothing. So I'm like really glad I joined this program too. So something I would do the same is to join the Adelante program, maybe even sooner, because I feel like me as a grad student, like, and my lab mates, like, I feel like I tell them stuff about Adelante. I'm like, here, apply here. Adelante told me about this. So like, I would definitely really appreciate this program.
That is so fantastic to hear. It warms my heart. Thank you. That is why we are here for all of you, right? To support you through this journey. I mean, I was first generation. I had no idea what was going on and I was just thank goodness I was like someone who asked a lot of questions. But a lot of times you get discouraged, right? And so and being able to have folks that you can turn to that will, if they don't have the answer, they will help you find the answer. That's really nice to have. So thank you for sharing that, Chelsea.
I agree. Like thinking about like grad school, especially since I took that long break, like I really wish I utilized more resources or did more research before entering the program. I mean, now I know there's tons of resources, and now I'm telling all the undergrads about this, but I could definitely utilize, especially like some of those like fellowships and some of those grants to help pay for like the funding part. That would have been so useful, but it's totally okay. Everything happens for a reason. So just take it like that. And then when it comes to my research, there is like a slight part of me that wanted to do something more like clinically, but I guess I could just do that in the future, so that's totally fine.
There's always the PhD. Thank you for sharing that, Ashley.
I can go next. Honestly, same as everyone else. I wish I can change some things that I did during undergrad. Like I completely regret not double majoring in Latin American studies. I feel like that would have probably encouraged me even more to like probably do even more research that like it wasn't until like I would say my junior and senior year that I start taking classes with like Dr. Lewis about like Latin America, modern Mexico, and it wasn't until my senior year that I found like this immense passion for learning more about Latin America and my own like culture and history that I regret not doing that sooner. And I feel like I could have probably done so much more if I had started like had gone in like a head start. But because of the research I had done, that has essentially like basically pushed me to want to do more and pushed me to like one day get that PhD. So that way I can at least add some more curriculum into that for high schoolers.
Thank you for sharing. I agree with you. I think I was the same. I entered into Chico State under a different major, and it was Dr. Lewis who convinced me to change to Latin American studies. And it was the best thing I ever did because I felt like I was able to reclaim a part of me that I had lost or that I didn't know existed really, about my culture, about who I was, about where I came from. And it gave me an opportunity and like a pathway to be able to devote myself to learning about where my family comes from. Where do I come from? What, and it was like I was giving back to myself through studying this. And so I agree with you. It's been a really beautiful journey, right? To be able to, it's like, it almost feels like a gift to be able to do that.
I think for me, I have to agree with Ashley. As far as grad school, I think I would look at more of the resources that are out there for funding, which I didn't. So that's the one thing that I really do regret. But you live and you learn. Like, what can I do? That's just one of the, I think, the perks of growing up. You just live and you learn. As far as for my research, I love the topic, but I wish it would have taken a little bit longer to look at different areas of nutrition and stuff and other gaps. But I can't really complain. I love my research. I love my topic and it's interesting. And in the future, like once I'm done with school and everything, I want to see how I can help not only in the clinical setting, but in a community setting. So there's great things to happen still. So there's still
Yeah.
more.
Right. I think who was it that mentioned it? One of our panelists, like one of you mentioned it, like going into grad school sort of makes you want to do more. Like it, right? It does it, like it opens up like all these possibilities and all these doors, like in your mind too, just like, oh, now I want to research, I want to explore this, I want to research this, where can I take this now? It's almost like the possibilities are endless, right? And it just opens up what is achievable for you. And to me, that was really exhilarating and liberating. So thank you everyone for sharing. And I think we've entered now into the question and answer. So if any of you want to put a question in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask any of our panelists any questions, whether it be about like their journey or their actual research, if there's something that interested you, it's open to anyone.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that you can only get one, unless you double major, you can only get one bachelor's from Chico State. And if you graduate and you want another bachelor's, you have to go to a different school. Is that true?
Rose, do you know that you can only get one bachelor's from Chico State?
Unless
you
you
know,
double major.
Unless you double major.
I can't say positively, but I do know that we do get stats in the Office of Graduate Studies for post-baccalaureate students who are getting a second bachelor's. So whether that's their second bachelor's for somewhere else, I don't know. But Joanna, if you would like to get me your contact info, I don't know if you're in Joanna's class, but I would be happy to find out the details on that and let you know. Yeah, because as I say, I know it's possible, but I don't know about whether you have to go somewhere else.
Because I also had that question for master's. So if I get my master's in something here at Chico State, but I want to get another one after, can I do that here at Chico State?
Well, as far as I know, if you do them consecutively, you're not going to be able to do them both at the same time, but you should be able to apply after the first one for another one.
Yeah, I do know that. I do know that you can get 2 masters in different topics, different areas of study from Chico State, because I actually think I have a few colleagues that have done that.
Yeah, you just can't get them at the same time. So,
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And if maybe if you're thinking about this, perhaps like, because I thought about that when I was trying to go into a different master's, which I didn't have that background in bachelor's. Just know that you can still get into a master's program, even if your bachelor's was not in the same field of study, right? And then you don't have to have the same bachelor's as the same master's. And so sometimes you might have to do a couple of extra requirements or a couple extra classes here and there, but you can do it. And that's something that we can talk about for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Does anyone else have any questions? I think Maricruz put a question in the chat, says if So is it a master's program if you don't go to grad school?
So, you know what, I would like to say that, if you finish your first 4 years and you've got your bachelor's degree, anything that you do beyond that is going to be graduate school, unless you're getting a second bachelor's. So if you get a credential, which just takes 1 year, that's, and it's all called post-baccalaureate. So that's after your first bachelor's degree. And then there are master's programs, and those are 2-year degrees. And that is grad school. It's a graduate program. But then you can also get other graduate degrees, including a law degree, which is about 3 years, or you can get a PhD, which typically takes 4 to 6 years. Or there are other degrees, and they're all called grad school. So there are different options depending on what you want to study. Does that answer your question, Marty Cruz?
She's saying, so is graduate school just a title?
Yeah, grad school is sort of a category. It's after your first 4 years where you've graduated with a bachelor's degree. That's sort of the category. And then you've got different options of degrees after that.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, as a category. It's like a category. That's the main question. Okay, great. Thank you, Marty Cruz. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Mariah.
So I'm currently a junior. Would I be able to do the summer research as well, or is this more for like seniors? Or like what would be the optimal time, do you think, to like apply to the program or a program like this?
You can do the summer research program as an undergraduate, so as a sophomore, junior, or senior, and as a graduate student. So it's open for sophomores, juniors, seniors, and graduate students. There is a little different weight in terms of your class standing when we review applications, right? Like, for example, if it's a senior and it's their last opportunity, perhaps, to be able to do this. But you are absolutely 100% encouraged to apply to our summer research program. So what do you think, Rose, about that? What's the optimal time? I think the optimal time is always.
Yeah, I would say definitely apply if it's something that you're interested in. Apply to Adelante. And the other thing that I would say is also be aware that there are other programs where you have the opportunity to do some research. And so if you are interested in STEM disciplines that are science and mathematics and that sort of thing, there's the Chico STEM Connections program where you might be able to apply to get in there and do some summer research. And I believe that there may be something in the chemistry and physics where I know they used to have a summer research program there too, so that you could check in with those departments. But also there's the Student Awards for Research and Creativity. That's called the SARC Awards. And that's another faculty mentored research opportunity. And I will say that they are, their applications are open right now for some spring awards. So I would say check out that. And I'll see if I can get that to that website link to put in the chat.
I just put it up in there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So there are more research opportunities other than just the summer research program. But my goal really, of course, is for all of the Wayfinders program mentees, whether you're in the class or outside of the class, to apply to the summer research program. You do get a little extra sort of push on your application for being part of Adelante. And so I really encourage you to apply. And even if you don't, get it the first summer, apply again, because we will be working on those application questions, as part of the Wayfinders program to make sure you have the best chance of getting funded. Yes, Joanna, you have another question?
Yeah, Joanna, you mentioned that about seniors just being their last opportunity or something because they're seniors. Are you referring to people that are, let's say, I do this summer, I'm going to be done with my junior year, and by the time of the fall, I'm officially a senior? Or do you mean like someone that's a senior right now?
Yeah, I feel like someone who's a senior, who is either graduating at the end of next fall, right? And if you're a senior right now, you're graduating, for example, in May, but you're applying to a graduate program here at Chico State, then you're eligible for the summer research program as well. The only folks that would not be eligible for the summer research would be students who are graduating in May, but are not attending graduate school in the fall. So even if you applied to a graduate program, but you haven't heard yet, I would still apply to the summer research program. And so we really encourage everyone to apply, right? But definitely, if you're graduating sometime next year, this is your time to apply. And we'll be applying in spring for the summer application.
Thank you. And can you reapply for the following summer?
Yes, you can. You can reapply. Yeah.
2 different research projects.
Would you repeat that again? Sorry, I couldn't hear it.
2 different research projects.
Oh, 2 different research projects. Have we had that before, Rose? Two different research projects?
I cannot recall, and I do know that, you can apply if you have received it once. Typically, I think that the preference is given to somebody who's starting out new and hasn't benefited from the program yet, but that doesn't mean that if there were room for another student that you wouldn't get selected.
Right. And then 2 different research projects, I don't think that would make.
At the same time, no, but consecutively, certainly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At the same time, no, yeah. But if you applied like one year and then the following year with a different research project, or some folks have actually applied the second year, but with an extension of their current research program. Of their current research project. So they wanted to continue researching what they were doing. That's also a possibility too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions or any questions for our panelists about the research? We're open to any of it. Okay, Jennifer Trujillo put a question in the chat. For the panelists, what was your process of narrowing down your research topic? That's a great question, Jennifer. I'd like to answer that.
I can go first. Just because, as we know, the feminist movement involves multiple different topics. I mainly narrowed it down to like 3 topics just to make sure that I didn't go all over the place. I also did topics that kind of correlated with one another, just because since I did representation with women in politics and their participation, that also correlates to how they wanted more, I would say, recognition when it came to like women who are facing a lot of violence, but also more recognition about women who had like different sexual orientations as well. I also had help from Dr. Lewis trying to help me narrow that down as well. So getting like feedback from other professors too helped me narrow it down, and also seeing which areas I had the most information that I can gather from, and also enough, I would say, secondary sources too, because although I had minimal secondary sources, I did still have to include some. So by having as much information as I could, I went with the 3 topics for my research. I also focused on the second wave of feminism specifically, just because it is a long time period if I were to do both waves and even what's happening currently. So I also had to narrow it down into a time era as well.
That is great information. Thank you, Anai. Thank you.
For me, I think narrowing down my research topic was really hard because when I joined grad school or when I joined my program, I had like no idea what I wanted to do. I literally came into this program like I just want to get my master's degree. And so I because I had a neuroscience background, or that's what I got my bachelor's degree in, I chose my professor that I wanted to study with based on that, and he really helped me guide through it. And because he has experience and I don't, I would give him topics that I kind of like was possibly interested, and then he would let me know if it was possible and doable in our lab. Just because it's a little different when you work with mice, you have to really focus on what environment you have and what class of university it is, because there's so many different levels, and if you're not at a specific level, like you're not allowed to do certain things. I guess I'll give an example of that. I forgot what class Chico State is in, but we're not allowed to work with, like, for example, marijuana. So if I wanted to do a marijuana study, like that is not possible. But I am allowed to work with like cocaine and morphine and some benzodiazepines. So definitely talking with my professor and seeing what is possible helped me.
I did not know that. That's fascinating. I have so many questions about your research, Chelsea. Thank you. And Lucia, do you want to share?
Unlike NIE, I was all over the place. So it really took my advisor to be like, okay, let's see what the research has. Let's focus on that. And so just like I said, those first few articles, I was like, oh, so there's a gap here, there's a gap here, and then there's a gap here because it keeps coming up in articles. And so that's kind of how I got to my topic and the components that we're looking at. Yeah. It wasn't as I think Annalie had a better idea of what research. I was just like, autism. And they're like, okay, but what part of autism? Like, what part nutrition? And I was like, okay, let's look at it. So, but it's
Yeah.
like I said, it's been fun just kind of doing all the research.
It's a process, right?
It's a very lengthy process, but yeah.
Thank you, Lucia. Ash, do you want to share?
Just really quick, just brainstorming with your faculty, your advisor, whoever you choose, is like the best thing. Like they're really going to help you narrow, because when you start thinking about it, I'm like, let's see, it's like too big. You're like, no, it's not going to work. It's too big. So you really have to like keep narrowing it. And then you guys really just bounce ideas and brainstorm. Like your faculty advisor is going to be like the best resource when it comes to that.
I agree. I think that that's such a great point to just bring home to everyone, is that choosing that faculty advisor that's going to be help mentoring you on your research, that's going to be really key. If there's a faculty member that you are already sort of drawn to, like their courses or the topics and the things that they're teaching in your classes, like definitely try to like pick their brain and learn more about it. And oftentimes they will, agree to mentor you on a research project. And that's where you can really start developing these relationships and also start to get an idea of what it, because, you can think about what you want to do, but it's also like Chelsea was saying, what is possible and what is doable with the resources and the information that you have, right? And so, because for me, I had a really big topic too, and I had like all this that I wanted to cover. And Dr. Lewis was like, that's like a book. You need to just focus on a chapter. And so sometimes it's like you have all these grand ideas and they can help you refine it and bring it down to something that's manageable to research. So, thank you, everyone. And sometimes they give you ideas. Exactly. Sometimes they give you ideas. Jasmine was part of the summer research program. We haven't heard very much about Jasmine's project. Do you want to share a little bit?
Sure. I think my project came from working with a professor as a TA. I worked with Dr. Kim Jackson, and we looked at artifacts that students made. And she is always thinking about, because her research is in more of her PhD is more of like education. So she's always thinking about like learning theory and how students are using assignments and things that they make in class as a kind of like as a way that they're learning and how we can like see it happening, right? But my research, which I found out later through the research that we worked on together through Adelante, kind of took a different turn because I was asking different questions. I was asking more of like, how are their cultural identities coming through their the stuff that they're making? How are they choosing to represent themselves, and what are they choosing to represent themselves? So it was more of it was still along the lines of how are students using artifacts, but instead we were asking different questions. And instead of correcting me, she just let me go, and it then became something that how our research diverged, because we're still looking at the same artifacts just in different ways. So that was, I think it happened accidentally, and she didn't tell me about it until I had started the thesis, like, oh, this is where, because I thought we were doing it together, and I was like, wait, so we weren't doing it together the whole time. It was actually me, but she told me, she used this as a way to empower me as a researcher. Like, this is where you are already stepping into your own kind of emphasis on what you're looking for and how you are researching. That is all you. I had moments of doubt and moments of imposter syndrome also, but this was one. But she let me in on this because she saw that I was already functioning as a researcher on my own, and I just didn't see it. I just thought I was like helping her. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Jess. That's fantastic. And Jasmine's research is also really fascinating. We end up talking about it quite a bit sometimes. And so I think that if there's one takeaway is that each of you here today are a scholar and a researcher, and this is something that you can step into, and what you're interested and passionate about can become something that you focus on, and that's part of your academic journey. And you can bring yourself and as much of your culture, your past, or your background as you want into that experience. That's your choice always, but to know that is welcome here. For all of you, are there any other questions from anyone before we wrap up? Well, I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your energy, and I celebrate all of your work. And I'm thankful that I get to, it's a privilege to be here and talk about what you've gone through and what you've experienced. So thank you. And thank you to all of our Adelante Wayfinders that are here today too. Thank you. And I think this concludes our class and our presentation. So we will see everybody next week. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you.